What's going on? It's Dr. Chris Collier at Elite Chiropractic Performance. What I want to do is go over a video just based on how to stretch or mobilize, release the elbow. Now, when we start talking the elbow, we're going to have a lot of wrist involved and forearm involved. So basically, we'll go over some stretches, mobility, and then myofascial release. Okay, so whenever we're going to stretch the elbow, a lot of it predicates on stretching the forearm. And the simple ones are bringing your wrist into extension like this and pulling, which is going to stretch the what's called the flexor compartment, the muscles that do this to your hand and wrist. So I would hold stretches like this for about 30 seconds, or I can do more of like an active isolated stretching where I would kind of bring it back, hold for 2 seconds, relax, go a little further, hold for 2 seconds and relax. For the posterior compartment or the wrist extensors, it's the same concept. Wrist is down and now I'm pulling in this direction. What I like to do in this fashion is I actually push on my pointer finger, that knuckle, and that's what I'm using to push down on. What this does is it creates a little bit of pronation with the flexion, and it's really, really good for like a tennis elbow type of scenario where you got a lot of tightness through this region through here. So don't forget about biceps and triceps. So simple stretches. Here's a tricep stretch, because obviously it kind of runs down the back of the arm, comes into the elbow, so it's important to get that a little bit more mobilized. And then for the biceps, I might do something where I straighten my arm and twist like this, or I can just bend my arm this way. This is kind of depends on the person and their flexibility. So that's just basic stretching. Now you can do some mobilization when it comes to the elbow and the wrist. And so, when we start doing it in that fashion, I like to do where my hands are, my palms are on the table like this. And I keep it so where my hand is fully loaded into the table. So I don't have my, I'm not rolling to the outside, I'm not rolling to the inside. I try to keep it equal. And what I do is I just bend over my wrists like this. So this is again creating extension, which you'll feel this stretch in the back of the front of the forearms there. And so I'll do some maybe sets of about 5, where I'll just kind of roll through about 5 reps. Then I'll turn my hands out. I'm going to do the same thing, 5 reps. And so obviously this does help the elbow, but this is probably more important for the wrist. And then I'll switch to here. And you can see my left elbow hyperextends. My right elbow doesn't extend enough because I have a plate and screws in there. So you can see a big difference with me. I would really need to focus on this for my right elbow, do it consistently throughout the week over time, and I might see some results in my range of motion. And then you can flip it. You can bring your wrist down like this. This is a little tough though, because I don't want you driving a lot of weight like through your wrist in this position. But nonetheless, you can still get a little bit of a stretch there. Now, next step, so we've kind of worked on wrist movements and a little bit of elbow as far as flexion extension. But don't forget that the elbow rotates in this fashion. So we got supination, we have pronation. So it's hard to stretch those. I might supinate as far as I can like that and then straighten, and that's decent. You can see how much extension I have there. So I go to here, stretch there, or I like to use a weight. So here I just have a straight thing here with a weight on the end of it, and basically I'll get down into a position here and I'll hold on, and then I'll just let the weight take me all the way as far as I can, and then I might hold for about 30 seconds to even a minute at times, and then I can go the opposite way. And so you're trying to create it at the elbow, so don't bend your wrist in certain ways, keep your wrist neutral, and then let that weight sink down. So if you don't have a weight like this, an easy thing to use that most people have around their house is a hammer, so go ahead and use that. And just try to test your range of motion and just let it sink down. And depending on where you're tight, you'll feel it in different areas. So that's just pronation, supination, stretching. And then we get into what everybody wants to do is like the pin and stretch, the self-myofascial release stuff. So a couple ways to do it. I have a massage stick here, which if you got one of these, great. If you have a rolling pin at home, even that's going to work. So what I do is I fixate it. So in this fashion, I'm keeping it, I lock it in between my calf and my hamstring here. And then what I do is I move my arm on the roller. So I'll just come up and down through here. I might work up into the elbow spot through here, all the way down to the wrist. I'll start adding wrist movements as I go, like this. I might supinate and pronate as I do it, like this. I'll find a tender area, and again, I'm not like killing myself with pressure here. I'm just giving a little bit, there's a little bit of tiny discomfort, but it's comfortable. And then I work my way through. And then I can flip around and kind of work the front, the flexor compartment, and start cruising around. Same thing. So it's like I'm diving in and coming out. And I can work a little bit of supination. Again, pronation, pretty straightforward. It's not rocket science. If you feel like you're getting some release and some tension, improving, then we're good. Now using like a lacrosse ball or something of that nature. So here's a Acumobility Ball. These are really nice because they stay put. And so again, I can find different areas that feel a little bit bound down for me, and then I can start to pin and stretch. Or I can move my elbow with it. It's not as effective as obviously when somebody's treating you. And you can use your hands. I'll get in through the elbow, I'll maybe dig my knuckles in, pin and stretch through here. And then lastly, it's working elbow range of motion. So basically, I'll just try to create extension for myself. I hinge it here, and I just straighten my elbow as far as I can, and then I give myself a little bit of overpressure, meaning I just kind of take it a little bit further, then I back off, then a little bit further, back off, trying to keep my palm up, back off. Most people need elbow extension or more of it, especially if you have tennis elbow or anything of that nature. And then you can flip around and do the same thing for flexion. So I go to here, back off. So even though I have a plate and screws in here, I can improve my elbow range of motion if I worked at it enough, which is another story in itself. So I'm just giving it end range, back off, end range, back off. Okay, so in summary, it's a lot. I know it's a lot in one video, but it's kind of easier to just group them all together. So we got some static stretching, working flexion, extension. We have more of the wrist mobilizations with the elbow, where we're on the table, kind of going back and forth, getting some good mobility through here. You can then work pronation, supination, using a hammer or some kind of one-ended weighted object and letting it slide and using gravity and the weight to improve side to side. You can then start to use kind of like a pin and stretch using some type of massage stick, lacrosse ball, Acumobility Ball, or your own hands. And then we'll do the end range extension and flexion. So, kind of figure out which things work better for you and then make a routine. And I would do it, a few times a week, trying to be cognizant of improving the mechanics from here down. Okay, so it's important whether you have shoulder pain or elbow pain, it's something I think that'll help. So please don't do things that hurt. If you feel pain, especially sharp pain, go get that checked out. But start to work this into a routine and let me know if you have any questions, and we'll go from there. Thank you.